Welcome to Cardboard Box Games. I'm Adam.
And I'm Adam. Today we're going to be talking about our main topic around playing to win versus just playing to survive. Let's get started. So the first thing we want to do is start a new topic this week, where we're going to just pick a card of the week and we're going to talk about it. So why don't you kick it off, Adam?
So mine is called the Commander's Challenge. It's when you play the card, it's an action card. It makes all creatures die except for the two strongest on the opponent's side and on your side. So one creature per side gets to survive, and that's the strongest creature.
Is that a rare card? I don't think I've played with that one yet.
Yeah, it's a rare card.
Yeah.
Destroy each enemy creature except the most powerful enemy creature. Destroy each friendly creature except the most powerful friendly creature. Ready and fight with your remaining creature. So then you have to use those creatures to fight against each other.
That is an actually pretty awesome card that I've never seen before.
Yeah.
And the cool thing is it's in Brobnar, so you could set up a big Brobnar turn, wipe the board, and then dump all your Brobnar creatures in after wiping their stuff. The other cool thing about that is you could, in theory, if you know that some of your creatures are going to die, you can manipulate the board because you can fight with some of them ahead of time.
You could, yeah.
Have you played with that card? Or did you just find it like in your research?
I believe my opponent played it against me one time.
Oh, man.
In a tournament.
That's insane. Yeah, I have not actually had that card played against me yet, nor have I played it. All right, so my card of the week is a card that has won me so many games. It's insane. But it's the 2-power creature, Grenade Snib. And when it's destroyed, your opponent loses 2 amber. To me, like, that card, and again, maybe it's because of this deck, but I have 2 of them in this deck.
Yeah.
And I also have the artifact that'll ready and fight with a creature. So one of my favorite things to do is, like, use that artifact to charge in with this 2-power creature. It's going to die and make them lose 2 amber. It has saved me a countless number of times. And honestly, when I first looked at that card, I'm like, eh. But when I look at that card now, I'm like, yeah, that card is something I look for in my hand. When I have one of those in my hand or on the board, I feel good because it's like a way to stop your opponent pretty cleanly. So let's talk about this past week a little bit. And the 3 of us in our family actually played in an Archon tournament.
Yes, we did.
The Archon tournament had a pretty low showing. How many people ended up being
Only 5 people actually went, so we were the majority of the tournament.
3 of us, yeah. So that made it kind of interesting.
It was also Leprechaun's weekend, or Leprechaun
St. Patrick's Day.
St. Patrick's Day weekend.
But where did you end up finishing in that tournament?
I got 4th place, I believe.
I think you went 1 and 2, right?
I did.
And I ended up, and you beat the person that was 2-0, which was kind of funny.
I did, yes.
I ended up going 2-1, and I lost to the 3rd person that went with us, Andrew, who ended up going 3-0 and winning the tournament. Mm-hmm. So we got a deck. We all got pins as well too. Like I got the pretty cool like logos pin.
I got a tamed one, but
and you also got chosen for the shadow poster. They gave away a poster at the end. I was really disappointed because the previous Archon tournament we went to had a ton of people out there, and this one had a very few amount. I'm hoping that it was just because of the weekend it was, and that this weekend will be a little bit better.
But also, we actually got a tournament. We actually won a tournament.
Yeah, that's true. Like
yes.
One of us actually won a tournament. And the sad thing is like I had to play Andrew, who was the other person that came with us.
We all had to play each other.
And I knew he was going to beat me because his deck always just is like that polar opposite, like counters my deck perfectly. I gave him a run for his money, but like he ended up beating me. So we actually have chains on our deck now. I have 2 on this deck here. Andrew has 3. I don't think you
0.
You don't have any. But yeah, so that's kind of cool. And so Andrew got to hold the trophy and get a picture taken and everything.
He did, yes.
I really hope a lot of people show up this next one, and I really hope that I can finish really strong in this next tournament. I want to win one before I get too many chains on this deck. So this past week, I also played a ton on the Crucible. Like, I would say every day I tried to put in a couple games just to make sure I'm practicing my deck and getting to feel like what other types of decks are out there. one of the days, and I think this was Sunday, I ended up playing 5 or 6 games, and I ended up losing the majority of my games that day. So it was like I went like 2-3 or something like that. But 2 of the games that I played was against an infinite combo. So 2 out of 3 of the games that I lost, my opponent got into the library access infinite combo with basically you play the library access a few times, they drew their entire deck, they gained enough amber, and then they key charged, and they did it again and again and again. So I literally couldn't win either one of those games. So my thing is like, I don't know why people play that on the Crucible. It's like literally you draw 2 or 3 hands, you get to the cards that you need, and you just start cycling. And I don't know, I'm not a fan of. I would maybe try that deck out once to see how that combo feels, but I don't know why people play that on the Crucible. Like, there's no interaction back and forth. They just beat you, and I literally walked away, got a drink, came back, and they were still like cycling through things. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm gonna sit here and like watch a YouTube video while they beat me. But anyway, the other game I lost on that day, I think you had actually watched it. So I forgot I had my Titan mechanic out. And
I told you to discard it too.
He did. He said I would discard that, and I was set up to win really strongly the next turn. But I completely ignored the fact that my opponent's keys only cost 5, and I didn't block that side of him. It's a really stupid mistake. Like that was. But overall, I've been playing this deck, I think, extremely well, and I think part of our main topic today is going to cover some of the things that I think are important when you play to make sure that you're making the most optimal decision. So I guess, how was your week in KeyForge? Because you talked about your tournament. Did you do any Crucible this week?
I did a little Crucible. I'm still trying to figure out what deck I really want to play at a tournament. Because the decks I'm playing don't really have the cards I really want. I really want like a Silvertooth and like a Dusk Runner so that I can like reap right away, gain 1, and steal 1 from the opponent right away.
You should go through all of our decks behind us, because I've done that actually, and I found one that's got a SAS rating of 59, so I've set that one aside, and I'm like, this deck's going to be my reversible deck.
59? That's the lowest now.
That's the lowest I've ever seen. But yeah, I bet you there are some pretty cool combinations of cards in there. And I don't think SAS rating matters too much. I think AERC matters a lot. So I think if you get like a 78-ish or something SAS rating with a decent, like 55 or 60 ideally, AERC, like that deck can win a tournament, honestly. That's my feeling. But you should go through them.
Yeah, I'm definitely planning on it.
So how did you do on the Crucible? Did you end up winning, losing? Do you remember?
I won most of my games with the Ponderous Duelist deck.
Yeah, that is one of your best decks, actually.
I don't really remember how the games went exactly. I just remember I won. But there was this one game I was playing against an opponent with like tons of artifacts on their board, and they had Snecklifter,
My favorite card in the game.
And they keep stealing like all my good artifacts, and they actually redrew Snecklifter and
my favorite.
Stole another one of my good artifacts. They stole Dominator, Bauble, and Ritual of Balance, I believe it's called.
That's that Untamed card that steals one.
Yeah,
you get
if
good
you
memory for
6
that.
or more.
Yep.
And I just got destroyed. They had like 2
That card is insanely good.
library access and stuff.
Yeah, it's so good. I love Snecklifter so much.
He is awesome card, yes.
So, one of the things that I truly believe, and I think a lot of people will play a deck one time, and again, there's no way we have time to play all of our decks. You need to find a deck that you like and really commit to this. So this is moving on to our main topic now, where you're playing to win versus playing to survive. So the number one thing that I want to say is, like, if you think about Magic the Gathering, there are times in a game where you have to make a play a certain way, or you're going to lose the game. What I mean by that is, like, you may not lose next turn, but you may lose in the future. So, like, there are ways that when you get to a point in the game in Magic the Gathering, you're like, I have to play this like this because that sets me up for my best odds to win. Even though if my opponent has this thing, I lose. And I'm a big fan of, like, you have to play to win. So you have to put yourself in a position that you're not playing to just stay alive. You're not playing just to delay your opponent one turn. You're playing to set yourself up in a position to win at all times. And the number one way to do this is you need to know the cards in your deck. And I'll tell you right now, like, what feels the best is when you look at the board state and you're predicting what's going to happen the next turn. Because, like, the best way to predict that is, like, is my opponent going to call a different house? Or are they going to call the house that's on the board? And if they call the house on the board, what's going to happen? Are they going to put 7 amber in their amber pool? Am I going to be able to stop them? But if you know the cards in your deck and you know what possible cards you can get to, like, put you in a position to have a better chance of being in a better position after their next turn, that is going to set you apart in an enormous way. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
The way that I do that, and this deck here that I'm holding up, that I went to the tournament, it's a Shadow Brobnar Logos deck that I've played, man, I don't even know, but probably 100 or more games with. And I know at any given time what cards I need, and I keep track of what has been played. So what I'll say about that is, like, if I'm predicting that my opponent is going to get a ton of amber in a turn or two, and sometimes you can feel that, or say they've already gotten a ton of amber, and you have the ability to draw a bunch of cards to set up a position for you to, like, get a huge lead. So the huge lead would be if you top deck this one card, the game balance changes a ton, right? Mm-hmm. And I've won games by thinking, like, all right, I need this card to change the balance of the game now. The only way I can get that card is to dump everything possible in my hand so I have a chance to draw it. You'll run the percentages because I need to know how many cards are left in my deck. If I have 25 cards left in my deck, odds of me getting it pretty low. If I have 12 cards in my deck, there's a good chance I could get that card. So you also have to kind of balance the number of cards in your deck as well when you're making these decisions. The best thing that I've been able to do in the past is an optimal situation is that you, like Evanescent Principle, for example.
Yes.
I've had 12 cards left in my deck before. I had 3 cards out on the board that would let me draw, and I had 3 Logos cards in my hand. My opponent had a ridiculous amount of amber, like 12 amber. So in my mind, that's 2 keys. And he's already got 1 key. So in my mind, he's won the game unless I get something like Evanescence Principle. Old Bruno that buys me some time, and so does Urchin. That's if he does nothing, right?
Yeah.
So to me, Evanescence Principle is the card that I have to have to set the game back up into an even state. So what I ended up doing in this situation is I chose Logos. I drew basically all the cards I possibly could, and I ended up top decking Evanescence Principle, half their amber, which was awesome.
Yeah.
Used Bat Drone to steal an additional one, so put them at 5 amber. Ended up, like, getting enough amber for me to forge a key. All because I knew the odds of me drawing that card was high. Now, my other option was I had a lot more Brobnar creatures out on the board. I had much fewer Logos cards. So I could have just focused really heavily on my Brobnar side, dumped the Brobnar cards in my hand, but that didn't accomplish anything in that scenario. So, like, for me, I was thinking about it, my Brobnar cards in my hand were more powerful too. Like, the cards that I had in my hand from Logos were not going to change the game state that much. So from the standpoint of what is the right decision there, the right decision there is to play to your odds, get to that card that you think will change the balance of the game for you as quickly as possible. Another example of this is, let's say your opponent has a bunch of creatures on the board, but they only have one amber. And they've been slowing you down the entire game with steal actions the whole time. So next turn, you know that they're going to have the ability to hit 7 amber because they have that many creatures on the board. So in your hand, you have a variety of cards. Maybe you have 3 Brobnar cards, 2 Shadow cards, and 1 Logos card. But you also have 3 cards. Maybe you have like 2 Library of Babbles, and you have a Doc Bookton on the board. And you really need some direct damage to start clearing some of their shadow creatures that they have out on the board. So my old way of playing, when I would be, I want to empty my hand.
Yeah.
So I want to get my 3 Brobnar cards out. And I want to get my 3 Brobnar cards down so that I can draw 3 cards and hopefully get what I need. My new way of playing is I'm looking at the house that can draw me the most cards that gets me closer to the answer that I need now. Because in this case, I ended up choosing Logos, drew 3 cards. I ended up getting into Positron Bolt, ended up getting to the point where I was able to take out 3 of their creatures because of the way they were set. So Positron Bolt's the one that does 3/2/1.
Yeah.
And that set me up in a position where now they can't actually just forge to get enough amber next turn. Because I was able to take out 3 of their creatures. They've dropped down in their creature count. So, like, when I chose that play, I'm like, I'm specifically looking for these 2 cards. These are direct damage cards that I need to use. I'm going to draw cards. I'm going to do everything I can to try to get that right now. And if I don't, what's going to be set up, worst case scenario, because that's also important to think about worst case scenario. You need to be, I was thinking worst case scenario, I get extra cards in the other 2 houses, so Shadows or Brobnar, and potentially I get a Old Bruno, or I get an Urchin, or I get something like a Grenade Snib that sets me up. So best case scenario now is I get the card that clears the board. Worst case, and at the same time, it allowed me to gain amber while doing all that because I was able to reap with Doc Bookton, draw 2 Library of Babbles, ended up going into a Wild Wormhole, ended up getting a Positron Bolt, so I ended up gaining a decent amount of amber as well. So those decisions are incredibly hard. So I want to say, like, backing this up a little bit because there's no perfect formula for this.
Yeah.
The first key, and this is something that somebody taught me in Magic the Gathering. How many life do you need to win in Magic the Gathering? 1. How many keys do you need to win in KeyForge? 3. How many keys does your opponent need to win? 3. So what's your goal? You keep them off of 3 keys.
Yeah.
So does the first key really matter? Not really. Does the second key really matter? Not really. The third key matters the most.
Yeah.
I've seen people take suboptimal plays just to keep me from getting my first key. Where, for example, like that Untamed artifact that you've got. Mm-hmm. I've seen them call Untamed, play 1 Untamed creature, and steal 1 amber from me. So I go from 6 to 5, and they get a creature on the board. That is, like, amazing to me as a player. When people just slow me down off of my first key a little bit, and they play weakly like that. Mm-hmm. Because it's me like, okay, well now I'm going to build up this great Brobnar turn, and I'm going to put a ton of significant pressure on them. So when it's the third key, you don't have an option, right?
Yeah.
Because if they get their third key, you lose the game. But there is a lot more weight in setting up a super powerful position in the future and letting your opponent get that first key. That is critically important. And I've just seen so many players like spend too much of their time
trying to stop them from the first
and second key instead of playing to win the game. That's the difference here, I think, in this game. So in Magic the Gathering, you get to a point where you know for a fact that you're going to lose the game if your opponent has something. You can't play around that. So like in KeyForge, for example, if your opponent has their second key already, you have, let's say, like one key. I don't know what that was. And you get to the point where you're like, you know what? I'm behind. They're ahead in places. Like, they're going to got more amber than me. Like, you need to start making plays as if your opponent doesn't have bait and switch. You need to start making plays like your opponent doesn't have cards that are going to steal more from you. Because at a certain point in KeyForge, you get so far behind that you need to focus on catching back up versus like, all right, I'm going to slow them down one more turn. Because that doesn't do anything when you're behind. But I've had players do that to me in tournaments.
I've done it too also.
I've probably also done this as well. And it's always thinking ahead. So I guess what I wanted to do is kind of boil this down to a few other, one more point before I jump this over, and then I want to get your opinion on all of this. When you're looking at the way the game is at any given moment, you should always be thinking about what is worst case scenario. They have Shadows, they have Sanctum, they have whatever house. Untamed is a scary one with Key Charge and Chota.
And Mars too with Key Abduction.
With Key Abduction. Like, what is the scariest thing that opponent can do to me? And then, what can I do? What is the scariest thing and what's the most baseline thing? A baseline thing would be like...
Just play a creature.
Just play a creature. And the scariest thing is something more powerful. So, like, bait and switch is a good example of that. It's like the one that comes to mind. If they do bait, or burn the stockpile is another one, where if you have 7 amber, they lose 4.
Oh, yes.
7 or more amber. Burn the stockpile is another one. So you want to think about that. And in Magic, that's the way you win. Magic the Gathering, you think about what your opponent can have. You think about the plays they're making. And you try to see as many lines of play as possible. In KeyForge, I think it's the same. Because I remember playing someone in a tournament. They had Brobnar, and this was sealed. Didn't know if they had burned the stockpile. But I'm like, I feel like they're playing like they do. And I asked him at the end, did he have burn the stockpile? And he did. But I ended up winning because I kept playing slightly around burn the stockpile. Like, I didn't want to ever hit exactly 7 amber just to make sure. Or if I did hit 7 amber, I wanted to put it at a time when Brobnar wasn't going to be a strong powerhouse on the board. Mm-hmm. So that's the other thing. So if a person has a ton of Shadows creatures out and you feel like they have a bait and switch, that's like amazing to them because they get to use their creatures on the board and they get to use bait and switch. Force them to use bait and switch when there's nothing on the board and you don't think they have much in their hand. Like, try to manipulate the game in that scenario. So anyway, the way that I believe you play to win is you always know your outs. So you know what's in your deck. You know what cards change the game state now, and you know what cards change the game state 2-3 turns from now. The most obvious one is like a board wipe. If you're getting behind on creatures on the board, a board wipe is going to pull you out of that. Favoring this category 2, favoring pressure on your opponent over just slowing them down a turn. So favor putting them in a position where they have pressure on them versus putting them in a position where you are just stealing 1 amber and keeping them off their key for an extra turn. Because optimally, if you can do both, that's amazing. Mm-hmm. That's the goal. That's the optimal goal. But if you have to choose one or the other, in the early game, I'd say you favor the pressure. The third thing is always think about the worst case scenario. Always try to set up your board or your game in a way that worst case scenario isn't as bad as what it could be.
Yeah.
Like, early on in the game, I remember gaining so much amber and I lost like a ton of amber to bait and switch. I feel like I would only do that now is if I got to the point in the game where I had no other outs. Like, I would only ever let myself get taken by a bait and switch by that significant amount if I was super far behind. And then the final thing is manipulating the board state. So you've got a question about that?
Yeah. You said if you have that much amber, you think you're far behind, you said.
I would only ever get to the point where a bait and switch would destroy me by gaining that much amber if I was behind nowadays.
Oh. Okay.
So, like, if my opponent's got 2 keys and I've got no keys, and they're already on their way to working through their third key. I'm just going to grind out as much amber as I can. Because at that point, I'm so far behind. And it also depends on what's my hand and on the board, right? There may be ways for me still not to do that. But I think if I feel like there's just very little chance for me to be able to come back unless I go all in, I'm going to do that. And if they have a bait and switch, it's okay. Like, I was already behind. I'm playing now to win the game. I'm not playing now to make their third key take longer. I'm playing now to put myself in a position where they have to have an answer to stop me, or I'm going to lose the game. You know what I mean? Like, or I'm going to win the game, rather. So the third thing was, like, always think about the worst case scenario. The fourth thing is manipulating the board state so that the things that you know are in your deck that are coming are going to position you well. So that may mean like, for example, I know I have 2 grenade stabs, my card of the week. If I have that artifact that ready and fights with a creature, and I have that a turn early in the game, it may not be the most strongest. It may not be the best card. It may not be the strongest Brobnar play, but in my mind, I'm thinking later game, I need my grenade snib to come out charging. So I need this card in play early, because the later you play that card, the worse it feels, because it comes untapped. You have to wait to get it activated. So, like, you have to manipulate your board state, knowing and thinking about what's happening in the future. So to me, that's an important. To me, that's an important thing to take away too. Is like, you can make a slightly weaker play if it manipulates your board state in a way that sets you up for a much stronger or better play in the future. It's weird. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So anyway, that's kind of how I've been thinking about this a lot. And I think, honestly, when I get to the point where I'm like digging for a certain card, like Sneck Lifter, it's like, man, this artifact's a pain in the butt. I need to go get Sneck Lifter. I need to forget. It's just like, I'm going to be drawing like crazy until I get. And my deck has the ability to do that because it has logos in it, and I love that. But I also think the same applies to cards that, decks that don't have a ton of draw. Same can be said with like archiving. Like, archiving is basically you get to draw an extra card. So anyway, what are your thoughts on all of that versus on playing to win? Have you ever found yourself making decisions to just slow your opponent down?
Yeah, like there'd be times I would have like 5 cards of another house and have like a card to stop them, and I would just play that card just because I don't want them to gain a key.
Yeah.
That's probably like a huge mistake, like you were saying.
So and
they're like,
it depends on what the overall game state is, but I would say typically, depending on what your 5 cards are in the game in your hand, if that's going to set you up for a stronger turn 2 to 3 turns from now, probably was a mistake to do that. If your 5 cards in your hand, if the 1 card in your hand pairs with an awesome board state, and it sets you up for an even bigger advantage going forward, then that might have been the right play. So it depends on the whole situation.
I believe I just had those cards. That's it.
That's it?
Yeah.
What ended up, do you remember what happened? It's probably hard to remember what happened in those situations.
I don't think they were at 2 keys yet. I think they're just trying to get a key. I just remember I was behind.
Yeah, and it's so hard because you see that answer in your hand, like, I can keep them off a second key.
Yeah.
But then you think about it and you're like, what does my next turn look like? My next turn is going to be even worse because I'm only drawing 1 card. Do the 5 cards in my hand are they more powerful next turn than they are right now? Like, those are the things you have to kind of ask yourself. And is there 5 cards in my deck that I have a chance to draw a card or 2 that swings this game back the other way? And that, if the answer to those questions is like no, like there's nothing in your deck to save you, or
then
like,
maybe just concede.
Maybe concede, or maybe play the 1 card like you did to slow them down and hope that you can come back. But honestly, the other thing that I will do, this is another awesome point, Sneck Lifter. So I strongly believe when you're getting close to reshuffling, you need to kill off creatures that you want to recycle back through.
Oh.
I've learned this through many games of play where my deck would reshuffle and I'm like, oh, Snecklifter's not in there. Kill off your creatures and get them back in your discard pile and get them shuffled back in, because recycling a Snecklifter is
powerful.
Amazing. Stealing 2 artifacts just outright is amazing. So now what I do is I'm always analyzing the board. I'm like, all right, so who needs to die? I'm about to reshuffle. I need Snecklifter to die. I want my 2 Grenade Snips to die. So those are 3 creatures that I want dead. They don't do a lot once, once they come out on the board and they die. Like, it's okay. Like, I actually want Grenade Snips to die at most times. Mm-hmm. So I just wanted to throw that in there too, because that is part of like just kind of manipulating the board and making sure that you. Because also the awesome thing is, typically you got artifacts out, you got creatures out. You reshuffle your deck. You've got less cards in your deck now because you got some in your hand. I've done that on the Crucible. In my next hand, I drew my Snecklifter again and stole their artifact. So it's like amazing. I love that so much. So I guess where is your mind, like when your opponent is behind and they play, this is the other thing, I like to just put myself in the opponent. I like to switch positions. So if your opponent is behind and they called this and all they do on their turn is like
play a creature and maybe tap Lash of Broken Dreams, like make sure key costs more. What's your thought there? I'm thinking that I'm in a huge lead right away. I'm thinking that I got this game in like the bag, basically, that they can't really stop me from forging a key, besides for Lash of Broken Dreams.
Yeah, and you're forcing them to do almost nothing on their turn to do that. So when I see situations like that, I'm always like, I need to make sure I'm not doing that. Because here's what that opponent could do. They could call a different house, start setting up a board presence, get to the point where they have a bigger disc turn, save that for a bigger turn where Lash of Broken Dreams matters a little bit more, but also they are leaving the game in a state where it's a little bit more equal, maybe outside of key and amber count, but at least board-wise.
Yeah.
That is exactly how I feel, by the way. When my opponent does like Lash of Broken Dreams, discard a card, or play 1 card, I'm like, all right, this game is going very well, because I'm going to play 5 cards, or not 5 cards. I'm going to play a lot of cards next turn. You played 1, and what are you going to do next turn? Like, how are you going to stop me next turn? Because I'm going to put pressure on you again, and next turn, you know what? I might even go up to 9 amber, because I don't think you can stop it if I go to 9 amber. To me, that's amazing.
Yeah.
The tapping Lash of Broken Dreams and playing 1 creature is probably a symptom of like, I just want to survive right now, not I'm setting myself up to win the game long. Because I have won games where I was behind 2 keys to none.
Really?
Because I play with this methodology. I will say, against Untamed, this can bite you in the butt a little bit, because you have to always be thinking, and sometimes I don't think about worst case scenario correctly, but it's like Key Charge and Chota. Be like, oh, I got them to 5 amber. Don't matter if they have Chota and they get up to 8 amber the next turn and just forge their 3rd key. So you have to think about those worst case scenarios. And I've almost leaned towards like, in those situations, like I'm playing to win, I either have to just hope they don't have that card and go for it, or I have to try to manipulate the board in such a way that I don't think they can gain enough amber to like Chota or Key Charge or any sort of key cheating as a whole. But sometimes you can't. Sometimes you just got to play like, I'm going to win next turn unless you win. I'm giving you the opportunity to beat me. If you don't have the 1 card that you need, I win the game. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I guess going forward, like there is no perfect answer. These are just kind of like, ways to help you. Ways to help across the board. I think find yourself in a situation where you are doing something just to survive, and if you start thinking down those lines, you probably want to take a step back and be like, all right, what does next turn look like if I do this? And if you don't do that, you're going to find yourself into just drawing 1 card, and you're going to be like, wow, I'm super behind now. I'm dead. You know what I mean? I went from being behind to losing the game because I tried to survive a turn.
Makes sense.
So anyway, do you have anything else on this topic?
Just a few questions.
Yeah, fire away.
So, how many times did you play with your deck to memorize your deck? All the cards in it?
I've probably a ton. I wish I knew, but I know my record on Crucible is like, I've been trying to keep track of, is like 22-7 now. So I lost quite a few more than and I played it at work a bunch, and I've also played it in 2 tournaments now, I think. Or 1 tournament? No, 1 tournament. I played a different deck the time before. You and I played it a bunch. I'd probably say in around 50 or more times. But I probably around 20-ish times I started really knowing the answers that my deck had. And I started knowing like what cards I wanted. And there are times you're going to run across, into a deck where it's just like, I have no chance. Like, they're doing everything to stop me here and I can't.
And what made you choose that deck for you?
So, honestly, the
Sneck
Lifter is a big part of it. If it had bait and switch in it, it would be amazing. But I love the combination of
Logos and shadows.
And my Brobnar creatures with Grenade Snib are amazing. Like, they're just so much fun. I can literally, I have 2 Goblin Chieftains, the guys that come in and ready a neighboring creature and fight with them. Like, those cards are like just MVPs in there with Grenade Snibs. Like, it's just, there's a lot of mechanics that just felt good when I played that deck. There's another deck that I was actually competing it with, Learned Horned Hand, something or another.
Yeah.
And that deck is very control-y, and it's like a lot of like succubuses and mind barb and mind control or whatever the card that makes your opponent pick a certain house. And I really debated, and I may still go back to that deck at some point. But right now, this deck, I'm just having a ton of fun with it. Like, I love playing this deck.
Yeah.
So, any other questions around that?
No, that's it.
All right. So let's talk about next week. We have a tournament this Saturday.
It's Archon tournament.
Starting with 2 chains. I'm going to go into it with the same deck. I know this deck isn't the strongest, but I feel like it's...
You know it well enough to make it good, or...
I know it well enough to like kind of work around some of those. So if people are playing decks they're not super familiar with, even though they might be countered to this deck, I think I can maybe outplay them. But I will say this deck's weakest matchup is against like hand disruption, and so that'd be like the succubus makes you draw less cards.
Yeah.
The cards that make you discard random cards. The little guy that makes you only play 2 cards a turn. So those are my weakest matchups across the board. So Dis. Mm-hmm. Dis, I feel like when I play against a Dis deck, I'm like, this is going to be interesting. I got to see what kind of deck this is, because I feel like I struggle more against them. And then I also struggle because they have board wipes, and I have a lot of like...
creatures on the board.
I have a lot of creatures that do things, which are really cool. And that's always painful to get my board blown up. So if I can dodge a bunch of like really strong Dis matchups, I'll be in pretty good shape. Because I do think those decks are weak to other things. So I think it ties pretty well into the meta, because I think my style deck is strong against a lot of style decks, but there's the decks that are strong against mine. Also, another deck that really is really tough against me is decks that just have infinite stun, because I need my creatures to gain amber.
Yeah. And once they're stunned, it takes 2 turns.
Yeah, it puts you so far behind. Stun is so powerful.
Or longer.
So powerful.
Yeah.
But my goal again is I'm going in to win. I'm going to win this tournament. I say that every time, but one of these days I'm actually going to win. And I guess you're still trying to lock down your deck.
Yeah, I don't really know what I really want. Yeah.
So you better start grinding through and try to figure that out. Otherwise, you'll be taking your Ponderous Duelist deck this time around.
Yeah.
Because that's the deck you've won with the most, I think, right?
Yes.
It's got an 86 SAS rating, or did last time we looked at it?
Yeah.
Okay. And then I bet Andrew will end up taking the Parent Who Flees from Dirt again, because that deck is awesome.
It is pretty awesome.
But he'll go in with 3 chains, which will be interesting as well. All right, I think that's all for me this week. How about, do you have anything else in closing?
No, I think that's all.
All right. So I guess we'd love to get your feedback on what you guys think about this. Like, I wanted to share this with Adam because I've been thinking a lot about how can I position myself to always be playing optimally based on the scenarios. And I'd love to know, like, if you guys have any tips or things that you guys use, or maybe like thresholds or lines that you draw for when you should be doing certain things. Because I see people play so differently, and that's what I love about this game. And our knowledge of it is growing. Like, every week we learn more about it. And by the way, Age of Ascension's coming out soon. I can't wait to fight our Call of Archon decks against Age of Ascension. And actually, this is crazy, but I saw on eBay that somebody was selling an original Call of Archons deck on, like, this. They did 2 print runs of it. So print run 1, which is what a lot of our decks are from. They were selling an unopened one for $50. I'm like, man, so Call of Archon, like, the first run is starting to become expensive. So that kind of surprised me when I saw that.
That is pretty weird.
Yeah, so maybe we should have held on to a couple unopened boxes of our first print run.
Yeah.
And there's a way to tell. There's like a graphic in the corner. I think maybe a third of our decks are the original print run. Like the ones I think that came in the KeyForge starter pack were. All right, everybody. Until next time.
Keep gaming.
See you later. Bye.